Welcome to Behind the Music. Now, if I look fat sitting in this chair, it is because I am. But that's not the point. This chair is made for tall people, and my knees
with extraordinarily long legs.
Yes, and my knees can barely reach, so I have to sit kind of back, and that's the reason. So, this gorgeous hunk of man flesh next to me.
Oh, well, thank you.
You know, so I mean, he's got the looks.
Down to the lake.
He's got the body.
He's got the looks.
He's got the tattoos. He's got the hair. He's got the beard.
Just don't have the talent. You gotta use the get up, you know, to hide behind those flaws.
Yeah, but I think I know a lot of people that'll disagree. So he's got the voice.
Sun guides my way. Born again now, the serpent, snake, and I.
He's got the guitar playing skills. But still we wonder, who is this man? Ross Harding, people. So Ross, thanks for letting us into your
You're so welcome,
wonderful
man.
and
Thank
making
you.
us coffee.
No, of course.
This is not wine, but it
Well,
is.
it could be.
It is 11:45, so
The camera can't see what's inside here. It
Yeah.
could be anything.
it could be.
Hopefully it's a good cup. Man. No, thanks so
No,
much
no,
for.
it's awesome.
Thank you guys so much for having me, man.
Awesome.
I really appreciate it.
Yeah. So Ross has been in the music industry for a while. I know this because I actually, before meeting Ross, I was a fan of his music. I found this band Black Harbor on them social medias, and one night I saw they're playing in Joburg. I'm initially from Pretoria, staying in Cape Town now, but I'm in Pretoria, and they're playing in Parkhurst at an Italian restaurant. I can't remember the name.
Oh, at La Boqueria.
That one.
Yeah.
So, and I'm thinking like, I love his music, love the vibe. Let's drive through and go check some music. We get there and this restaurant is packed. Ross and his band are sitting in a little corner. We can't sit anywhere close to them, but at least we can listen. And
Restaurant vibes.
dude, it was a vibe. And I think the coolest thing for me that evening, this is now a couple of years ago, so 2 or 3, maybe more.
Yeah,
Can't remember.
could be.
Even more.
Yeah.
So, and you do a cover of Gary Clark Jr. Ding, 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 ding. Ding,
Bright Lights.
Bright Lights.
Yeah.
Dude,
Still on the set list as well.
yes, what a vibe.
Yeah.
And from there, I've been a fan of Ross. Luckily, in the meantime, we've met. We've started touching each other in proper ways. And yeah, so thanks for letting us in. Ross, to me, is probably one of those guys, if you follow him on social media, he's one of the hardest working musicians I know. Like someone that grinds on the constant. And I think the 3 things I want to chat to you about today, mostly getting behind you and behind your music, is how you got into music, your influences and stuff, and what made you decide, like, this is what I'm doing, you know, full time. The second thing is being in a band, you know, that type of vibe, like and now we've discussed this briefly off camera, is running, managing, singing, playing, performing, writing, all of that. And then the last one's going to be a little bit secret for when we get there.
When we cross that bridge.
Yeah, so Ross, please tell the people out there, well, I think everybody should know you, but how did you get into music?
I think there was always something about music that appealed to me, and art at least. You know, creative outlets from when I was a little kid, drawing, and being involved in some sort of creative space. But the kind of earliest recollection I have of it is driving with my mom, listening to like Eric Clapton Unplugged, you know? So I think that was maybe that's the first time I can remember being like, oh, this music thing is a thing.
It's cool and beautiful.
And registering it on a conscious level, you know, when you're really young, I don't even know that you realize that you're listening to music and it's something that can be done, you know, something. So I only really started getting into rock and roll music when I was like probably 10 or 11, but it hit me really hard, you know, and obviously learning guitar that
All
just
the
became-
brothers, all the sisters. But I know that like the cliche story is your older brother coming into your room.
I actually had an older cousin. There's four boys. I've got a younger brother and two like way older brothers, but I didn't grow up with them. So I think my earliest influences were from my late cousin. He unfortunately passed away when I was about 14, but he definitely gave me guidance in what I would be listening to. You know, he introduced me to bands like Cedar. You know, I remember phoning him and saying, "Oh, my dad gave me some bucks. I need to go to Look and Listen and buy a CD." And he's like, "Dude, the Disclaimer 2 album is out. You need to get that."
Was that Cedar or still Sarin Gas?
It was Cedar then already.
Oh, so
they'd already been overseas and they'd done Disclaimer 1 and they just released Disclaimer 2, which had all those tunes and then, you know, it also had a cool DVD in it. And that kind of influence was, it had a massive impact on me because it would shape the way I thought about music and what I liked. You know, I was listening to bands like Metallica and Pantera, but also the video footage was something that I found super important because I was watching these live shows and listening to these bands and just being completely overwhelmed with like this thing, you know, like I want to do this. You know, this is, and I don't think I've ever really looked back.
I had a similar thing, but with Wes Borland, funnily enough.
Yeah,
the reason why I started playing guitar was not because, you know, that it was just like this weird mofo Wes Borland on stage covered in, and he was jamming so hard and it was just the vibe.
Absolutely.
So so Cedar and then from there?
Yeah, man, and then it spread. I mean, there were bands that I was into before that. I think I was listening to like maybe Metallica.
Everybody was listening.
You know, maybe.
I don't think there's a proper guitarist out there today that wasn't influenced.
Yeah, well, in some degree, to some degree, by either Metallica or Kirk Hammett or that kind of era of music. You know, the '80s kind of music. So it's hard to pinpoint like an exact moment, but it was somewhere around there where I think it also just happened so fast in the sense that once I discovered a certain band, I was going down this rabbit hole to just listen to as much music as I could, you know?
Yeah.
So anything from Cedar to Pantera to Chimera to Folk of Politicar, you know, I think around that time, a couple of years later, they released this 4-track EP that had Brand South Africa on it and
one of my favorite
Antibiotica.
Yeah.
And it had the acoustic version of Hemel op die Platteland, which is still like one of my favorite songs, you know.
Dis hemel op die platteland.
So I think what was cool about it is that there were so many different influences and there were also local influences, you know. And sometimes I must confess, I maybe don't give some of those bands as much credit in my musical development, you know. Maybe just because of the fact that you almost kind of forget.
Yeah. It's not that they're not brilliant, they're just kind of overshadowed by what comes from overseas.
You know, and how the development goes as you start listening to other bands. Like, you know, when I was about 15, I became utterly obsessed with Soundgarden. Still now, you know.
Yeah.
And so that maybe that was always like in the forefront of these kind of questions. And, you know, like that repetitive thinking about certain bands. But when I'm reflective of it, I can say to myself, like, there was a massive influence, you know.
From where?
Yeah, there was, Folk of Politicar had a massive influence on me in terms of just what they were doing and what it felt like at that time. And like going to shows, you know, that was something that also just...
And I also think maybe for a lot of guys, the motivation behind the fact that it is possible to do that locally. Because I think for a lot of our bands, well, obviously we had Sarin Gas and all of those, you know, bands Cedar that went overseas. But I think Folk of Politicar gave a lot of bands here, like, the vision that, you know, you could do that.
Yeah, you can do it on an international level, but you can do it at home.
Exactly.
And you don't have to be looking out, you know, abroad for you know, oh, I can't do it in South Africa because we don't have an industry or whatever the case is. You know, and I think in a lot of ways that may be applicable in the sense that the South African rock scene is small compared to. It's just about numbers. You know, it's not that we don't have fans or that people don't dig rock and roll music. You know, there's fans for every type of rock subgenre that exists in SA. You know, even
it's just limited amount of people.
It's just the amount of people that are prepared to go out every weekend. You know, like if you've got, you know, a fan base of rock lovers that's like, let's say 1 million people. You know, spread out over the whole country. Then you've got like, you know, and you've got like 1,000 bands. You know. And festivals and venues, you know, if you start thinking about it in those terms, it's like, you got to be really special for somebody to come out and give you like their hard-earned money to watch your show.
100%.
You know, and deal with crowds and deal with tickets and all kinds of things and stand in queues at the bar that like
to get a drink
like forever, you know. I remember watching Fokoff at, obviously I've watched Fokoff a lot, but I watched Van Co Cartel. At the old Cool Runnings in Four Ways.
Yeah, that was a place.
With Jed on guitar at that time, and I was just like...
Jed to this day.
Man.
I played a gig in May this year, I think, in Polokwane. And we opened for well, not for Van Cut, for Frans van Cut, Die Gevaar.
Yeah.
And Jed on guitar. Dude, and I mean, I've seen Jed play so many times, but every single time, dude...
Unbelievable, man.
Yeah.
Unbelievable.
But I think again, we have these international influencers, not that they're necessarily trying to influence, that we just, you know, like Gary Clark Jr., like the up and coming, you know, guitarist of today. Like, I mean, not really Tim Henson, because Bolivia is like a whole different story, but in that scene, and we all look towards the States, you know, and try to get influence.
And Europe and, you know.
But meantime, we've got monster players here.
Absolutely.
That's like on their level or even better.
Yeah, and I think that South African fans are notorious for like overlooking like the music that exists in a local environment, you know. There's a lot of like superb guitar players and musicians in general in South Africa, you know. And I think to look to those guys for influence, you know, like one of my heavier influences in the later sort of parts of my career is Dan Pedlansky. You know, and it's somebody that from time to time I've been able to send a WhatsApp to and grab the odd coffee or whatever, you know, and that to me, like that is super valuable. Because that is literally like he's one of the best guitar players in the world, you know.
Yeah, he was rated top 10 blues guitarist now by Guitarist magazine.
Man, and
recently. So.
And just watching that dude play live is like, you know, you're literally watching the cream of the crop, and it's a person who is accessible. You can go to his shows, you know, you can be a part of that audience.
Yeah, I mean, the weird thing again, following Dan on social media, like I saw him now 2 weeks ago playing this festival in Norway, and then 2 days later he's at Marshall Music buying strings, you know, and then 2 days later he's in East London doing a gig. But I mean, this dude was just in Norway, you know, and for us, like I mean, for the local musos, that's like it feels like it's like unaccomplishable, but, you know, but it is accomplishable.
It can be done, and I think you definitely have to look to your local like heroes for that influence, because I think that's the only real way that you'll be able to bridge that gap, you know. And there are South African musicians who've done it well, you know, from the like sort of rock and roll music and beyond, you know, with the likes of like Jeremy Loops and these kind of artists, you know, like doing phenomenal things.
The next question I wanted to ask you. So you had Black Harbor, your band, and recently now you've changed it over to the Ross Harding band. And you've also joined another band with Dale Schnettler from Prime Circle, the drummer, called Fear of Falling. So before we get into the Ross Harding band, so the Fear of Falling, how did that happen? How did you...
Yeah, so basically... the singer for Fear of Falling, Jack Atlantic, you know, made his departure due to time constraints and focusing on something very dear to him, you know, his own work. And so that spot opened up, and the guy said to me, "Hey man, do you want to do this?" I went to a meeting, and I was like, yes, this is cool. It's super professional. The infrastructure was set up right. The songs are great.
Because we were both at the actual album launch.
Yeah.
When that, I mean,
It's not even that long ago. It's like not even 2 years.
Less. I think it's last year. Last year September, I think.
Yeah, and so that's been an interesting one as well because it kind of takes me back to some of my earlier roots. Like I mentioned earlier, like bands like Seether and that sort of post grunge kind of thing, which is similar to what I'm doing with the Ross Harding band, but not the same. It's far away enough for it to feel like a completely different thing, you know. And there's no real kind of bleed over.
Yeah.
Which is cool because it gives me a completely different way to approach it creatively, but still keeps me, you know.
How does that process work for you now, filling in someone else's shoes? Because now this guy was involved with the songwriting. I mean, Jack Atlantic is a great singer, you know, he's an awesome dude. But I mean, he was obviously involved with songwriting, was recording his voices on the album. And I've always thought about the process where bands replace, like guitarists are easy because you just learn the parts and there you go. But replacing the front man of a band, the vocalist, you know, the voice, like how does that play off, you know, for you now actually? Because obviously his voice is on the previous album.
Yeah.
And, you know, it's like, I don't know, for me it'll be weird. Like I'm singing in this band, I'm singing this guy's songs. But yeah, how does that work for you?
It is weird, man, because so as a singer, I definitely approach vocals as an instrument, you know, in terms of a technical space, and that does help me to transcend certain boundaries of like a vocalist personality, for example. I think often the voice is thought about as like a very unique thing that we all have a very specific voice, and that's true to a large degree. But there are certain like kind of stylistic devices that I would use to
manipulate your voice,
to kind of to get it to work around that. So it's always going to sound like me, but it's really about breaking down what that vocalist has done and looking at those kind of techniques and then reinterpreting those in the way that I might do it, you know, because it is tricky to,
and also lyrical content, you know, actually like really singing, not singing a cover, but like really
like as if I was the songwriter, you know. So there's a lot of spaces that one has to go into. This was actually a big reason for me taking on the project, is to go, okay, yeah, this sounds like quite a challenge. Sphere of Falling already had quite a it had already done pretty well, you know, both locally and internationally. So there is a bit of that challenge to say, okay, how am I going to take these songs and make them my own and still serve them, you know, not just completely rewrite all the parts. This is my
band now.
Yeah, so just doing them justice in that sense. So I think that's the crux of the approach that I took to it, you know, is looking at it emotively, looking at it from a technical perspective, and then just trying to blend those two ideas, you know.
Yeah, because I mean they are quite. I dig their vibe. Eh? They are rocking. So yeah, that's very cool. Now, Ross Harding band. You moved away from the band name Black Harbor, moved to your own name with your band and stuff. Well, we both know. But what happened there? Why was the reason that you moved away from the name from the Black Harbor band to Ross Harding?
Yeah, so the long and short of that is, especially considering COVID and everything that happened during that strange time, I felt that the infrastructure that, you know, was needed to keep the band name Black Harbor running was kind of fading to a certain degree, and I'd made the decision to run it under my own name for a number of reasons, you know, logistical reasons, artistic reasons. There's a whole there's a lot of variables that went into that. But I think going forward, what my strategy is run my band as effectively as I can, you know. And it's anything from the hard rock blues band to solo stuff to events, you know, and just having everything under the same umbrella.
Yeah.
And you know, I'm lucky that I'm working with dudes that understand that kind of goal, you know, because doing it as a solo artist or whatever the case is can often be like you're floating your own boat all the time. I have struggled with that to a degree. This like shameless self-promotion, you know.
Yeah, I know, because it's difficult, because you kind of feel like a dick trying to like, oh, check me.
Exactly.
But
man.
it is not about checking me. It's about,
Yeah.
you know, it's like,
It is. So I think that there's a very practical reason why that made the most sense to me, you know. And there's something about musical, let's call it branding, that is a little bit less rigid when working as an individual artist or that idea, because bands are often they kind of label themselves. It's a blues rock band, and then you start working with progressive influences but why have you changed?
Yeah.
This isn't what I expect to hear, and you see that in the music industry all the time. Where
well,
I think,
especially if you work with musicians in the band that are kind of like so stuck in their ways, and you evolve. I mean, we've seen this with so many bands. Bands that luckily, for me personally, I felt didn't evolve at all is the Red Hot Chili Peppers. If you listen to the new album,
the same music.
It's the same, but it's the same band members, you know. But then you do get bands that actually, like Linkin Park, they evolved. I mean, from
every
their first
single album, you know.
And the cool thing is they were all in on it. But then there's also a lot of bands, you know, that didn't see eye to eye, and band members, you know,
And
left.
things,
That didn't agree. Incubus, probably one of my favorites, you know, is with their initial bassist, who I felt was a monster before Ben Kennedy, but it's just he wanted to go do something else, you know.
Well, another one that's I always speak about this is Metallica.
Yeah.
And they've not only evolved because of their musical influence changing, or the influences that they find present in their writing process. They've also adapted because of time. And I think that's super important, is not necessarily to write music because it's trendy or you think it's not going to fit in this isn't popular anymore. It's not really about that. It's about
where you are.
And it's also about growing with everything that's happening in the world. You know, music is often a reflection, or it can be an escape from, you know, whatever's happening around people at that time in society and whatever the case is. So I think what I really gravitated towards with this idea of doing it as a solo artist is not being limited to any of those boundaries. Is if I want to do acoustic stuff, then I can do that.
Yeah.
You know, if I want to work with another band, I can do that too. Session guitar work is something that I love doing. You know, whether it's Afrikaans music. You know, I play for a really cool Afrikaans artist, Liesel Peters.
Here we go.
Yeah,
but that's
you know, just being involved in music in general, and not you know,
stuck
stamping yourself to like I can only do this and I will only do this, and my artistic integrity.
But I also think, and gone through the whole process, I think it's a way better move for an artist like you to do something like that, because we know we're in South Africa and there are a bunch of brilliant musicians out there. I'm not saying, you know, we have a lack of great drummers and bassists, you know, or whoever that would want to join you in a band. But the problem is finding the right person that you click with, that likes the style of music that you do, you know, that type of thing. That niches the market down so much to what you want to play with. And the problem is once you find that guy, everybody else wants him to play with them as well, and he also wants to play with other people. I've gone through this thing where one of my close friends, Neelis Du Plessis, monster drummer from Alberton, and but the thing is, he can't commit to one band. You know, it's obviously for financial reasons as well. You know, if he can gig every night of the week,
it's got to be earning the bucks.
He's got to be earning the bucks, but then you get to the point where it's the one who books him first, you know. So, and then there's no bad vibes. It's just unfortunately the fact that
It's business.
he got booked first. He's 100% committed to the project, but that booking came first.
Yeah.
But now you sit without a drummer. Now what do? Do you cancel your gig? Or what do you do? So, and from that point of view, we also had a whole thing about changing band and going after the artist name, but it makes so much more sense, you know. So especially with you, with the tier musicians that you work with, you know. So if the bassist can't make it, it's no bad vibes. You're out of the band, you suck, you're not committed.
No.
It's just I'm busy. Luckily enough, we got someone else that can fill in for you.
Yeah, and
it's no.
And the other side of that, or another variable with that thought is that as you develop and you grow your fan base and your audience and the gigs become better, and you know, then you have both other musicians who want to work with you in a session capacity or whatever the case is, but you also have to understand that comes with certain responsibility.
Yes.
You know, so you got to be able to pay all these dudes, and you got to be able to make sure that the gigs are up to a certain kind of standard, you know.
So right there is where the power went off. Lovely load shedding. And we could unfortunately not wait for the power to get back on because Ross had to rush off to his new EP launch that was last week Friday. And we could unfortunately not end the episode, but instead of just canning it, I thought this was so much great content in the sense of input from running a band, Ross's history, how he got into music, that I felt like I'm going to post this in any case. So I'm sorry that you guys missed out on the last and final question. We got into Ross's guitars, his gear and all of that. Sorry about that, you know, what can we say? ESCOM. So if you're into Ross, if you dig Ross, if you like his music, if you want to find out more about him, just check it out on Instagram, Ross Harding Official, Facebook, Ross Harding Official, and also his other band, Fear of Falling. They are very cool. And thanks for watching. See you next time.